On our wedding night, she pulled her hand away, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "My body, my choice. We'll keep things separate." I thought it was a joke. By the time I realized it wasn't, she had already started telling people I was pressuring her. She didn't know I'd been counting every day since, and every day brought me closer to ending this on my terms. Welcome back to Revenge with James, where betrayal meets a plan, and the people who think they've cornered you end up trapped themselves. If you're new here, this is where we take a wrong done and turn it into a story you can't stop listening to. So grab your seat, because tonight's story is about a marriage built on lies, a plan built in silence, and the moment everything came crashing down. My morning started the same way, the smell of dark roast coffee filling my kitchen, the low hum of the fridge, sunlight spilling through the blinds in thin gold lines. I lived in a quiet neighborhood where the loudest thing you'd hear was a lawnmower on Saturday mornings. I liked that rhythm, the same diner for breakfast on Sundays, the same jog through the park before work. I wasn't chasing thrills. I was building something steady, or so I thought. I believed in keeping my word. I believed in earning trust. And I believed that marriage was a promise you kept through good and bad. That's what I was raised to think. That's what I brought into this union. Love, duty, and a willingness to make quiet sacrifices if it meant building a future together. She wasn't a stranger to me when we married. We dated for almost a year, dinners in small Italian restaurants, late-night walks where she laughed at my worst jokes, and those lingering touches that made me believe she was all in. Her smile had a way of pulling me in, though sometimes it didn't quite reach her eyes. I told myself I imagined that. I wanted to believe we were on the same page. Her parents were polite but distant, the type to shake your hand instead of hug. I didn't think much of it. My friends liked her well enough, though one of them once asked, "Do you ever feel like she's holding something back?" I brushed it off. Love makes you do that. Even her small comments, little jabs about how I dressed or the hours I worked, I let them slide. You tell yourself it's nothing. You tell yourself marriage will smooth the rough edges. If only I'd paid attention to the signs earlier. Because the woman I married wasn't the woman who moved into my house after that wedding day. And soon I'd learn exactly how deep her game went. What mattered most to me wasn't the size of my bank account or the number of keys on my keyring. It was respect. My father always said, "A man is measured by how he's seen by the people closest to him." That stuck. I wanted my wife to look at me and see someone worthy, a man who kept his word, who protected his home, who carried his share without complaint. I'd built my life around that idea. Every overtime shift I took, every vacation I skipped, it wasn't for me. It was for us, so that when we had kids and I wanted them, they'd grow up in a home where their father's word was as good as gold, where my name meant something. Respect was my anchor. Without it, I'd be adrift. At first I told myself the changes were nothing, just the adjustment of married life. She stopped asking how my day was. Small thing, right? She began eating dinner before I got home, saying she wasn't hungry later. And the smiles, the ones that once pulled me in, started to feel like they were meant for someone else entirely. One evening I noticed her phone lighting up across the table. She flipped it over, screen down, before I could even glance. "Just a friend," she said with a shrug. My gut felt heavier than my plate of food, but I forced a nod. I told myself trust meant not asking questions you didn't want the answers to. Then there were the withdrawals, little sums missing from our joint account. Nothing that would set off alarms. Just enough to notice if you were paying attention, and I was. I didn't say a word, but inside, I felt the air shift, like a storm you can't see yet, but you can smell it on the wind. It's strange how when things start to slip, your mind drags you back to the moments when you thought you had it all. I remembered the first time she met my mother. We'd driven 3 hours in the rain, just so she could have Sunday dinner with my family. She laughed with my mother in the kitchen, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder, as if she belonged there. My father had pulled me aside later that night and said, "She seems solid, son. Take care of her." I'd promised him I would. I thought about the time I was out of work for a month after a back injury. She brought me coffee every morning, tucked the blanket tighter around me before heading to her own job. Back then, I would have sworn she was my partner in everything. That she was for me, not just with me. Looking at her now, eyes averted, phone clutched like a lifeline, I couldn't connect that woman to the one I'd fallen for. The warmth I remembered had thinned into something brittle, something that could crack and cut if I held it too long. It happened on a Friday night. I came home from work, the scent of takeout boxes still hanging in the kitchen, music playing softly from her phone. I reached for the doorknob to our bedroom and found it locked. I knocked once, twice. Her voice came muffled through the door. "I'm tired. Just sleep on the couch tonight." No fight, no reason, just that. And the way she said it, like she was doing me a favor. I stood there for a minute, hands still on the doorknob, feeling something in me shift. Not anger, not yet, just the solid knowledge that a line had been crossed, and she wasn't planning to step back over it. The next morning, she acted as if nothing had happened, passed me a coffee with a faint smile, asked about my day. And in that moment, I realized the cruelty wasn't in the words she'd said the night before. It was in how casually she could erase them come morning. The betrayal wasn't shouted. It was served with a smile, and I swallowed it in silence. That night, I didn't go inside right away. I sat in my truck, keys still in the ignition, the dashboard clock glowing in the dark. 10 minutes passed, maybe 20. I just stared at the porch light, wondering how the hell we got here. We'd stood in front of family and friends not long ago, promising forever. I thought I knew what that meant. She clearly had her own definition. The rain started tapping on the windshield, slow at first, then steady. I could have gone inside, could have asked questions, demanded answers. But the truth was, I didn't want another deflection. Another half-smile meant to shut me up. I sat there in the silence, letting it sink in, letting the hurt settle into something quieter. Not forgiveness, not yet anger, just the first step away from whatever this was. When you're sitting in the dark like that, you start replaying things you should have paid attention to. Like the time her brother called me in the middle of the night, desperate because he owed money to people you don't owe money to. I covered the debt, no questions asked, because she asked me to. She kissed my cheek and said, "You saved him." I didn't realize then how quickly gratitude can fade. Or the time she'd been caught in a lie early in our relationship, nothing earth-shattering, but enough to shake my trust. She cried, swore it would never happen again, and I chose to believe her. I told myself love was worth that risk, that everyone deserved a second chance. Sitting in that truck, I understood something my father used to say. Some people see a second chance as a gift, others see it as permission, and I was starting to suspect which one she was. The night it happened, I was working late. When I came home, the house was quiet, too quiet. Our bedroom door wasn't just closed, it was locked from the inside. I knocked, no answer. When I pushed it open with my shoulder, I found her asleep on the bed, but she wasn't alone. The glow from her phone lit up the face of a man I'd never met, shirtless, lying beside her like he'd belonged there for years. She stirred, blinked at me, and said nothing. Just nothing. No panic, no shame. That silence was louder than a scream. I didn't shout. I didn't throw anything. I stood there, every muscle in my body wound tight, and I memorized the scene, the smell of her perfume hanging in the air, the half-empty wine glass on the nightstand, the way her hand was still resting on his arm. It was the moment something in me snapped and locked into place. I walked out without a word. My hands were steady, my heartbeat slow, not because I didn't care, because I cared too much to waste this moment on noise. I drove to the bank first thing the next morning, then to my lawyer's office. I didn't tell anyone, not even my closest friend. I gathered what I needed. Bank statements, receipts, copies of every withdrawal she'd made without telling me, screenshots of messages I'd quietly backed up weeks ago. The silence wasn't weakness, it was a shield. Every time she smiled at me over breakfast, I matched it with one of my own, knowing I'd already started moving the pieces. And while she thought I was too broken to fight, I was already dismantling the ground under her feet. The beauty of a good plan is that it doesn't announce itself. I started with the small things, transferring ownership of the house into a trust with my name only, canceling the joint credit cards, and opening accounts she couldn't touch. Every bill she relied on me to pay, the phone, the streaming subscriptions, even the car insurance, I let them quietly lapse. I recorded her phone calls when she forgot I could hear her from the next room, saving every careless confession and cruel comment. She didn't notice a thing. If anything, she thought my quiet meant surrender. She kept spending, kept smiling that smug smile across the dinner table. And all the while, the floor under her life was turning to sand, grain by grain, and she didn't even feel it shifting. There were nights I lay awake staring at the ceiling, asking myself if this was who I wanted to be. Maybe I should have walked away. Maybe I should have let her have it all, and called it a lesson. My father used to say, sometimes the win is in leaving first. I wondered if I was making a mistake by staying in the fight. But then I'd remember the sound of that locked door, the sight of that man in my bed, the way she smiled at me, like she'd already decided I was too weak to do anything about it. And the doubt would harden into something else, something sharper. I wasn't just reclaiming what was mine. I was making sure she could never use someone like me again. Her mistake came on a Thursday. I came home to find her in the kitchen, music playing, wine glass in hand. She was on the phone, laughing, telling someone she was finally free, and that his money is basically mine now. She didn't know I was standing in the doorway, recording every word. That call was the last piece I needed, the confession that tied it all together. Later that night, she ordered expensive jewelry online. The receipt hit my email. It was almost poetic. She'd already started spending what she didn't own. That was the moment I knew it was time. The next morning, she woke up to the sound of knocking, not from me, but from a process server at the door. Eviction notice, legal papers for annulment and fraud. Accounts frozen, credit cards declined. I'd already changed the locks before sunrise. She stood there barefoot, still in her robe, the wine from last night still on the counter behind her. Her voice cracked when she asked, "What is this?" I didn't raise my voice, didn't gloat. I handed her the phone, still playing the recording of her call from the night before. Her own words filled the air. She stopped talking. I turned, walked back inside, and closed the door. Sometimes justice doesn't come with a bang. It falls like a quiet storm, soaking through everything they thought was safe. Word traveled faster than I expected. Her family didn't call, not to defend her, not to condemn her, just silence. My friends were split between stunned laughter and quiet nods, the kind men give when they understand without needing the details. She tried reaching out once, leaving a voicemail that started with rage and ended in sobbing. I didn't respond. Sometimes the loudest scream isn't in what they say. It's in their eyes when they realize they've lost. The man I'd found in my bed vanished from the picture entirely. No public posts, no defiance, just gone. I suspect he realized that whatever she promised him had turned to smoke the moment I shut that door. I'm not the same man I was before all this. I'm not softer, but I'm sharper. I've learned the cost of ignoring the small signs, the danger of giving trust to someone who sees it as a weapon. There's a peace in my life now, but it's not the blind peace I had before. It's a peace I guard. When I make coffee in the mornings now, it's quiet. The kind of quiet you choose, not the kind forced on you. I don't chase answers from people who never plan to give them. I don't beg for respect. I keep my word, I protect my home, and I keep the porch light off for anyone who thinks they can take what's mine. The wedding ring sat on the counter for weeks after she was gone. I never wore it again, but I didn't throw it out either. It wasn't gold to me anymore. It was a reminder. Every time I passed it, I remembered the promises we made, and how she broke them before the ink on our license was dry. The day I finalized the paperwork, I dropped that ring into a small wooden box and locked it away. Not because I wanted to keep it, but because it belonged to a chapter I refused to repeat. Funny thing, the house key she'd once carried so proudly now lay on my desk, scratched and useless. I never tossed it. I kept it as a warning. Trust is the real key, and once it's gone, nothing opens the door again. I thought that was the end of it. The papers were signed, the accounts were mine again, and her shadow had finally lifted from the house. But a few nights ago, I found an unmarked envelope in my mailbox. Inside was a photo, the two of us on our wedding day, with a single word written on the back in her handwriting: soon. But if she's looking for the man who once let her walk all over him, she won't find him here. Was I wrong to protect what was mine? To take back what I built with my own hands, my own time, my own sacrifices? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not here to make it sound noble. I'm here to tell you that some lines, once crossed, leave you with only two choices. Let them strip you bare, or stand your ground in the dark until the tide turns. I chose the latter, and I'll live with that choice. Some people believe revenge makes you smaller. Maybe they're right. Or maybe it just carves away the parts of you that let others take without giving back. They thought I'd do nothing. I just waited until they handed me the rope. This entire story stays in my voice. Every detail is what I saw, what I heard, what I felt. I don't hand the camera to anyone else. No friend retelling a scene. No someone told me later. If I didn't witness it, it doesn't make the cut. The world is filtered through my eyes. The porch lights hum, the way the coffee smelled in the morning, the weight of the envelope in my hand. My pain, my plan, my justice. That's all you get. 2 years ago, I was standing in that same kitchen, handing her a coffee, believing we were a team. Now I stand in the same spot, alone, the coffee warmer buzzing for no one but me. The jump isn't for drama, it's for truth. It shows the distance between who I was and who I am now. 5 months later, after the court signed my annulment, I saw her across a parking lot. She didn't see me. I didn't wave. I didn't need to. That chapter had already closed. Now that you've heard it all, tell me, would you have fought back, or just walked away? What would you do if the person you trusted most turned their back on you the moment they got what they wanted? And here's the real one. If the people you fed with your own hands one day turned and starved you, would you still offer them a seat at your table? Drop your answer in the comments. I'm curious to know if you see this as justice or just survival.